Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
All right, you're very welcome along to this week's edition of Friday Night Racing. It's Ger and Johnny with you this Friday afternoon. We broadcast live, of course, every Friday afternoon on all of the OTB Sports channels. You can get us on OTB Sports Radio, on our YouTube channel, Facebook and Twitter. Wherever you want us to be, we are there for you. And then, of course, every Friday evening at 8 o'clock on Friday night on Off the Ball on News Talk, we're there for you too. So if you want to get in touch, you can text the show on 53106, or of course you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream and we'll get to it a little bit later. Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie or follow the Twitter account at HRI Racing, and the hashtag is every racing moment. Johnny Ward, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to have you back. I think your replacements / deputies, namely yours truly, Will and Richie, did a pretty good individual and collective job in your absence, I think. So the pressure is kind of on. You kind of have to score today. Just
feel a little hot under the collar. Is that what you're telling me? I need to the groove in the chair is a little bit uncomfortable for me. It's been smoothed out to somebody else's butt cheeks.
In a physical and metaphorical sense, yeah. The pressure's on, Ger, and it's a big weekend for you to come back.
Well, no better weekend, you know. Come with the hour, as they say. It is Derby weekend, right? And it is a Derby festival, and traditionally this would have been a massive weekend for the entire county of Kildare, because loads of people come into the county. There's parties all day, essentially, and then the quality of racing is just absolutely sensational as well. So this time last year, obviously, we didn't have any of it, but we're having a little glimpse of what normality might look like this weekend.
Yeah, some people are back. The crowds for the Irish Derby had gone back a good bit from the heyday that you mentioned, probably when you were sort of maybe in your late teens, early 20s, give or take. The Derby was massive in Kildare, and then the Curragh was redeveloped. There would have been a few issues with the Curragh redevelopment, but it's at a situation now. Pat Keogh came in and he did such a job to get kind of the community back, that there was a real feel-good vibe about the Curragh, and then the pandemic happened. So there were classics run at the Curragh, and like we did a piece with Johnny Murtagh this morning just on Racing TV, and the backdrop of the horses on the gallops at the Curragh, it's an amazing place to train horses. But what you spoke about, the festivity and the kind of the atmosphere that it should entail, that can all come back, and the Derby can be an amazing weekend, and this is kind of the first step towards a return to normality, not only for the Derby, I think, but for racing itself.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well, but I want to get to our guest this week, who is Gavin Ryan. Gavin, good afternoon to you. How you getting on?
Good, thanks, Joe. And yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. We talked to you at the end of last year, kind of September, October time, and things were going good, but not as spectacularly well as they have been since. So you're riding the crest of a wave at the moment.
Yeah, look, I suppose in numbers wise for my winners, it's probably not as high, but the quality of horse and riding is definitely a lot better. It's a very lucky position. I obviously lost my name at the end of last year, and it's obviously a time that some people struggle and others don't. So obviously my outside ride, I probably don't get the same amount, because a lot of them people want to name off them and whatnot. But thankfully I have a very good boss in Donald O'Brien, and he's very loyal. I'm riding a lot for him at the minute, and I'm getting to ride a lot of the better races. So I'm absolutely delighted, and that the quality of horse and ride this year is a lot better. So no, I'm delighted.
When you say the quality of horse is a lot better, obviously that comes in results as well. What does it actually, is there a difference in how you feel when you're on a good horse and you know the horse is good? Do they just respond in a different way to your promptings?
Yeah, well, even in the better races, the tempo of the race are run a lot stronger and a lot quicker, and a lot of the time in good races there's very little hard luck stories. Everyone knows what they're doing down the start. You jump out, you usually get a clear enough run through. If your horse is good enough, it'll do the business. But they're just different caliber. They can switch up through gears a lot quicker. A lot of them move very well. And they're just better races to be riding, in the tempo is always a lot stronger, and there doesn't seem to be as many hard luck stories.
This, Johnny, is the type of thing where we're seeing a new generation. We've talked about this so many times in the past on the show, about there being these generations of superstar jockeys who have 2.5, 3, 4 decades of absolutely sensational top level stuff, and it looks like we're seeing the birth of a new cohort coming through.
Yeah, I remember doing a piece for HRI with Gavin, Andrew Slattery and Ben Cohen, who has a big ride in the Derby tomorrow as well, when I think they were doing their leaving certs the following week, and Ben Cohen wasn't actually sure what day the leaving cert started. This was about 5 to 7 days in advance, and I think he thought he was starting on Wednesday, but it was actually Monday or something like that. And as it turns out, actually, Ben did very well in the leaving, despite the fact I wouldn't suspect that he was entirely dedicated to his studies. But I suppose the striking thing was that these three lads and the Cross lads, Cross brothers, and maybe one or two others, they're all from Tipperary, and they all, Tipperary is a hotbed, obviously, of hurling and racing. We've seen what Rachel Blackmore has done from Killinall, which is where Gavin is from. But these three lads, Andrew, Ben, and Gavin, came along at the same time, and I suppose the reputation of the three sort of preceded them because they were so good as apprentices, but a lot is expected of them. And I think it was last year Dermot Wells said on this show he thought it was the best generation of Irish jockeys in his lifetime, which is incredible because Dermot Wells has been around a long time, so it's a good bunch of lads. But that doesn't mean for Gavin individually or for anyone else that you're going to deliver because it's so competitive.
No, of course. Gavin's just pulling in there for us. So the quality of horses, as we were talking about there, Johnny, that's the thing as well. Like it turns out that the evolution of the jockey is something that we've talked a lot about on the programme, particularly in light of how Rachel Blackmore ended up getting to the point now where she is clearly one of the best jockeys. But different people mature at different paces. But as soon as you start getting the good horses, if you can show that you're capable of dealing with them, then what happens is it becomes a virtuous circle.
Definitely, yeah, and I think in fairness, Gavin got the ride of the year last year, the HRI Awards at Galway, and as much as there were no crowds at Galway, Galway's probably as tough a challenge for a flat jockey as there is, especially in a Premier Handicap, where you're coming from a kind of a circuitous route, and Gavin has shown that. I think when we had him last on the show, what really shone through is the fact that he's very well mannered. He has come through Jim Bulger's tutelage as well, which would have been a massive help. I think Jim really inculcates in his jockeys a sense of respect and decency and respect for authority, but also just being well mannered and dealing with owners well and stuff like that. And then on the racetrack itself, obviously Gavin has just done really well, but he's also, I suppose he's quite fortunate in that Donnacha O'Brien, who himself was quite fortunate to get all these young horses in his ephemeral training career, he knows that he's lucky, and I honestly think that unless you're Tony McCoy, and even Tony McCoy would probably say you'd prefer to be riding 20 good horses than 100 poor ones with the same amount of winners, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not about like the rigmarole of day in, day out. It's riding in races like the Irish Derby. I mean, and as much as Fernando Vichi is a long shot, he's a long shot who goes in there with some sort of a chance, and that's what you're all week you're probably thinking of riding Fernando Vichi, whereas like we had Rory Cleary on and you were talking about the repercussions of him winning the Irish Guineas. There aren't really any because he doesn't ride in those races very regularly, whereas Gavin knows that more of these are on the way.
Yeah, Gavin's back with us. Gavin, we were talking there about the evolution, and obviously while it's important to be good off the track, it's more important to be good on the track. And so when you're talking about the horses being good and going up through the gears as you were when we were just chatting to you a second ago, you obviously had the confidence yourself, given the quality of rides that you've given. Johnny talked about winning the award last year as well, that you're in the right place, that you deserve to be there, and that the hard work that you've put in over the last number of years is beginning to pay dividends.
Yeah, look, that's exactly it. But that's the other side, as you were saying there, when you get to ride in these races more often, it's not really like if you do end up being a horse with a chance in those big races, a lot of times things mightn't happen for you because you might be panicking or whatnot. But then the more chances you get in these sort of races, the more likely you are to be able to take it all with a pinch of salt and kind of be able to relax when you do get a chance, So I think the more sort of good races and top end races you can ride in, the better. Even if they're not with a chance, all those kind of races end up kind of giving you a lot of confidence when the chance does come to ride one, that has a big chance in the day. So no, definitely the more often you ride in those races, the better in the long run.
You see as well, Gavin, like we'll say when Sovereign won the Derby and so forth, you do sometimes have, strangely enough, run derbies when there was a lot of chat that Ballydoyle only had one horse at Epsom, and there was a lot of kind of chat in hindsight that had backfired because he got injured in the race, so they effectively had no horse at Epsom. But just you're going in there with the horse tomorrow. He was obviously a very good 2-year-old. He stays very well, and maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, Ballydoyle have 5 horses in this race. You wouldn't really know what might happen. High Definition mightn't perform in the day, and if you don't have a ticket, you don't buy the lotto. You don't win the lotto, I guess.
Yeah, look, that's it. We held our horse in a very high regard last year. We always thought he'd be a better horse, stepping up to 1.5 miles this year. Might even get a little bit further, but it just he didn't seem to hit the ground running this year, and he raced a bit lazy, and we stuck blinkers on him the last day, and it really seemed to bring the best out of him, and he looked like the horse we kind of hoped and thought he might turn into. So he won well the last day, and he does stay real well. So I think the stronger pace that they run the race at, the better he'll be suited by it. So definitely, like these sort of races, most of the horses that are in it because they're obviously held in high regard by their yard. So a lot of times you might not get the results that you kind of might think will come out. But as I said, if they're going to run the Derby, they're probably there because they deserve to be there, you know. So these better races, there's probably 4 or 5 that you could make case for, and you could understand why they'd run well, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose just Ger and I spoke about this, and I remember the late Pat Mullen, the first Irish Champions weekend, because there was a bit of a promotional drive behind it and so forth. Leopardstown, there was a great atmosphere at Leopardstown that day, and it's kind of carried through Irish Champions weekends, but it must, I know there's not much of a crowd there tomorrow, but it must mean something, because I imagine, like the rest of us, you are a little bit fed up of just, like, you know, winning races to tumbleweeds for the last year and a half now, where even to get a reception from a few hundred people would mean something were you to win any race tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it would, of course. I even seen there in Ascot last week, they had a good crowd back, and it just kind of it makes you kind of appreciate how special these days are when the crowd's there and stuff, and it definitely sets a good atmosphere, and it just kind of adds a bit of life to the racetracks, and it kind of stops everything feeling so repetitive, you know. So it definitely gives us as riders a buzz, and obviously if you're lucky enough to get a winner on these good weekends, it adds to it again.
Yeah, no doubt, and we're all really looking forward, because we see the difference that having fans in the stadium makes at the Euros.
Big, like, it's not. I mean, I don't know, Ger. I was borderline bored of watching soccer, to be honest, with nobody at it, and even like Premier League games, it was just like, God, I don't know how much more of this. Like, I don't know. I don't think long term would actually survive as an entity, because it's just soulless a bit.
Definitely helps. I did want to talk to you, Gavin, about what's going on in Tipperary and Kilnall at the moment, and what was it like when Rachel Blackmore was becoming the most famous jockey in the world? Because she's from the same. You're all from the same place. It turns out it's a hotbed of high quality horsemanship at the moment.
Yeah, we're all kind of 10, 15 miles between each other, so we're all from the one at Leary, and those small towns in South Tip were kind of, everyone knows everyone. So there was a massive vibe and a massive buzz around the place when Rachel was doing so well. I think a lot of people probably made a lot of money off her because they were backing her because she just looked like she couldn't get beat, you know. So she definitely lifted everyone's spirits during a tough time, you know. So it was great, and as I said, I think it's something that'll stick in people's minds for a long time. So no, as I said, I think it definitely helped people get through those tougher times. And
yourself and Ben Cohen are from the same school, different GA clubs. Is my information good on that?
Yeah, no, that's correct. We were in the same class in school, and we're from 2 different parishes, all right, but they're only a stone's throw away from each other, and we played in 2 different GA teams, but we were in the same class in school. So
you would have been hurling against each other, and now you're racing against each other this weekend in the Derby.
Yeah, that's it. So I suppose nothing's really changed. We're still rivals, just in a different sport.
Ben, obviously Royal Ascot and all that, and I was chatting to Johnny Murtagh about this. He said, I think he may have smiled twice during the whole of Royal Ascot despite having a winner. I've never met a kid as horizontal as this lad. Obviously, now I'm sure he might have matured a little bit since we did that video, but success kind of comes easy to him.
Yeah, he's a wicked laid-back character. I don't really know what you'd have to do to get a smile out of him, but it's not as if he's not grumpy or anything. He just doesn't seem to show much expression, especially not facial expressions anyway.
What would you do would you kind of be as chilled out if you won the Derby?
Probably you wouldn't be as chilled out as if Ben won it, but I'm sure I'd be able to crack a smile or something.
Yeah, well, Donncha and yourself would be a fairly laid-back partnership as well. I mean, Ger and I were discussing this. Like, your average age is little over 40, I would have thought, which is
combined. Average
combined.
Is 20, yeah.
Sorry, average. So combined age little over 40, which is a good bit less than half of some trainers still on the go. You know, so but for your youth and all that, he is a fairly laid-back trainer. Yeah,
I think Donncha is 22 and I'm 21, so I suppose we're still very much babies in the sport, but look, he's very good at what he does, and he doesn't miss a whole pile, so I suppose there's no real reason for him to get flustered. He knows he's on top of everything, and thankfully the horse has been running well, and we've been getting some good results, so I suppose when things are going well and he knows he's on top of everything, it gives you a reason to be relaxed.
Can I go back to Ben just for a second? Were you and Ben like mates, friends? Were you palling around in school, or were you kind of like in different social groups? Because it's kind of wild that two very successful young jockeys were in the same class. There must have been something driving you both on.
Yeah, no, we were definitely friends. We used to go racing and we used to go to the gym and so on and all together. So we were palling around in school for a good while as well. So.
And were you chatting to each other going like, you know, I want to ride for Johnny Murtagh, I want to ride for one of the O'Briens? That stage kind of probably didn't even know Donncha was going to end up training. Like, when you were talking about what you wanted to be, what was that?
I suppose when we started riding first, it's like every other jockey. You just want to ride winners. You don't really mind who they come from or who provides them. You just want to ride as many winners as possible and get noticed as much as you can. So I suppose then we probably would have been talking above ourselves if we said we wanted to be riding for certain people. We were definitely just happy to be on one with a chance in not 65 in Dundalk, I think, back then.
And you're in school at this point as well, so like, how difficult is it when you're daydreaming of winning derbies or 0 to 65s in Dundalk, which I presume you do a little bit of both? How difficult is it then to knuckle down to quadratic equations and geometry and I'm trying to remember the distillation. What was the chemistry? The cracking of oil?
This is probably called the intercert you're talking about here. Is that long ago?
Yeah. But I suppose myself and Ben, we were never too studious. I suppose once we started riding on the track and we got the bug, there was very little school could do to kind of keep us focused. Whereas Andrew, on the other hand, he was always quite big into studies and getting things done on time and that, but myself and Ben not so much.
Just in relation to the jockeys coming through, like you probably already feel a little bit old, or in terms of like you're in your early 20s and you look at the kids coming through now. Who has impressed you? Like, because you look at Sam Ewing, obviously Dylan Brown McMonigal, I think Siobhan Rutledge is a lovely jockey as well, but what do you make of the ones under you, and do they already seem like young to you even though you're only in your early 20s?
Not really, no. I'm still fairly aware of what age I am, so I know there's definitely another bunch of good riders coming through. You've Dylan Brown there, he's a very good rider, and Mikey Shee, Siobhan, Sam Ewan, Paddy Harnett, Luke Mack. There's a very good bunch of riders still coming through. So I would have been riding in the French races and all that with all them last year. So I definitely know I'm still only a baby.
And what's it like in terms of? Like, I was trying to think of this. I was talking to my brother during the week about your first days in secondary school and trying to think back about like how it was exciting to meet new friends, but it was also a bit intimidating. What's it like going into a weighing room where you have all these like literally legends of the game and you're trying to beat them?
Yeah, it's I suppose it's a bit surreal sometimes. You're walking into Wareham with the like obviously Frankie Tori and that who are still riding. He would have been someone that we all would have grown up watching, and he was a celebrity back then. So to be being aware with the likes of that of Frankie, it's a bit surreal really. But at the end of the day, we're all there to do the same job. So I suppose once you've met him once, and if you're riding those bigger races, you kind of put that behind you, and you realise that it's your job. You're there to compete, and they're your rivals at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like what do you make of the standard at the moment? Because it's hard for you to say you're only starting off, but it's definitely accepted that this is something of a golden young generation of jockeys.
Well, there's definitely a very good bunch of riders in Ireland, but I think the other side of it is you can see that with the likes of Donica and Johnny and Joseph, they're not afraid to put up young riders, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. Obviously, maybe 10 years ago, younger riders wouldn't have got the same opportunities, but it's like everything. If one person starts to do it, everyone kind of follow a suit, and I think it's really something that's brought Irish racing along, and it's really opened a lot of doors for us younger riders, because we're able to get very good opportunities at a lot younger age, and I think it's something that's definitely going to help Irish racing down the line, because as I said earlier on, the more of these better races and bigger races you can riding on the bigger days, it's all going to stand you in the long run. So I definitely think it's going to improve Irish racing, and as I said, I think the main reason for that is the fact that younger riders getting better opportunities now, thanks to a few trainers who kind of changed the game really.
Yeah, and of course former jockeys themselves who were young riders, and probably in different cases, were given opportunities that others might not have been given, but were probably also jocked off at various stages for slightly higher profile jockeys in other circumstances. Just very quickly, because I know you're on the way to the Curragh this evening. There's I think you've got 3 rides today. I'm going to screw up the name of this one. De Puntitas, is that correct? At 5 o'clock?
Yeah, that's her. She's a Caravaggio filly. She's had one run in Leopardstown. She was very clean that day, and I think she would have come on a lot from that. Killian Leonard rode her that day, and he said she was just raw, and she would have learned a lot from that day. So we're hopeful that she might be able to give a better account of herself today. We like her at home, so hopefully she can get into shape.
And then Rocky Dreams at 5:30.
Yeah, Rocky Dreams is a horse that Leanne Breen claimed out of Dennis Hogan. Won a claimer nicely in Dundalk over 6, runs over 7 today. It's hard to know if it's up to that standard of a race, just after winning a claimer, but Leanne is fairly clued in, and she does well with her horses, so hopefully Rocky Dreams can run a good race too, and I'm sure Leanne will have him top nick.
Okay, and then Miss Myers tonight at 7:10.
Yeah, she's a filly that seems to be running off a nice mark. She's a lot of ability. Seems to be a bit unlucky in her runs. She takes her time and likes to come through them. So the fact it's been a long time since she won. She's been running consistent since, and I think she just needs things to fall right for her to get her head in front. But she's definitely there with a big chance.
Just before you go, obviously social media has been brilliant for young trainers, and I suppose brilliant for the profile of a lot of people in racing, getting owners and syndicates. But obviously you wouldn't have missed the Safi Osborne, Jamie Osborne stuff yesterday, where Jamie, Safi's dad, obviously just kind of brought to mind a message that she'd gotten over a ride. I think that she'd given a horse or whatever. But what's kind of been the reaction among jockeys in Ireland to that, and the whole social media thing, where like it's not infrequent that you will get abused over a ride or whatever?
Yeah, look, we were talking about it in the yard this morning, and I suppose everyone takes that sort of stuff different. We all get a lot of it. I get a lot of it as well. There's people, obviously, there's certain ways horses have to be rode. Like Miss Myers, even she takes her time and likes to come through them. And obviously, when things don't work out, then you are going to have punters who are going to say, "Oh, you're too far back. You gave that no ride and whatever." And there's often a lot of abuse attached to that. But I think when you've got enough of that sort of abuse, you kind of become immune to it. And I think you take it with a pinch of salt. Like I was very lucky. I got a hard time, but last year, Donica just said, you just need to laugh that sort of stuff off. And that's what I've been doing since. You can kind of see a bit of a joke in it more so than anything else. And I think you just kind of learn to get over it. And that's kind of part and parcel of your job. You're going to have people that aren't going to be happy with you. And at the end of the day, they're not the people who are putting you up or giving you your instructions. So I suppose you don't really have to take any notice of it.
I think that's a really mature response. Obviously the message that Jamie put up in relation to Safi was another level entirely. But I think your response is like, if you're trying to, I suppose, if you're trying to talk to a young jockey or trainer in terms of having social media, because there's a lot of benefits in terms of promotion and you get so much praise on it as well. I think your response is obviously it's very wise, because after a while you probably just have to take it with a pinch of salt.
That's it. No, exactly. It's always going to be there, and I don't think. I think you can get as many people involved with it, the guards and whatnot, and I think there's always going to be a few people there, and they're going to have a few chips on their shoulders. So I don't think it's ever going to go away. You just kind of have to learn to deal with it and realise that they're not the people that make the decisions, or they're not the people that are going to be paying your wages at the end of the week. So I think at the end of the day, once the people you're riding for are happy and you can keep your owners and trainers happy, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, for sure. Gavin, great stuff. We wish you the very best of success this weekend, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks a million, lads. Thank you.
It's Gavin Ryan there at 21. He's got the world at his feet, Johnny. That's the progress he's made even since the last time we had him on. So I think looking back there was September. Since then he's ridden out his claim, was named champion apprentice jockey in November, obviously turned pro, and he lost his claim. Dual winner at the 2020 Horse Racing Ireland Awards in December, so won the Emerging Talent Award and then topped the public poll, as you said, to win the Ride of the Year on Salt and Stall in the Mile Handicap Galway Festival. He's on Salt and Stall again tomorrow, actually. Probably should have asked him about that. Has essentially established himself as Donnacha O'Brien's first jockey and had his first rides in Royal Ascot last week. That's not bad. 6 months. What did you do in the last 6 months, Johnny? I put on about 2 stone, so there you go.
What have we and the thing with lockdown as well is you're nearly 3-6 month kind of blocks of it now, and the first 3 months was notable that the weather was great for some of it, and that kind of got you through it. Then the middle 6 months was like, oh, we'd be done by Christmas, and then the third, I think a lot of people said the last 6 months have been almost like the hardest, because it was like, well, the weather wasn't great, and it was like, when are we going to get another wave, and then another variant, and another this. To answer your story, I've done very, very little in the last 6 months. The reason Gavin Ryan has done so well, I think, is it's like, as more jockey, being a good jockey is about like 3 things. I think talent, to an extent your luck, but your attitude off the pitch, effectively, or off the racetrack. So many jockeys have gone down the wrong road, where they've just they've been I suppose enticed into having too much fun off the racetrack. It's very, very easy to get into a life of booze and drugs.
Yeah.
I've never gotten the impression from Gavin that he was ever going to go down the road, and that's really important.
It is. I mean, it's also great that the start of his success has come at a time when you weren't really able to party too much. There just hasn't been. So and also the first flushes of this super success and obviously he's been successful for a couple of years now, but have come as well when there's been no crowds and no pressure, and so that adulation that hasn't yet kicked in, and they'll come back slowly. So he's going to be able to ramp it up at a calibration that a lot of people don't have. So it hasn't gone from unknown to suddenly winning some massive race and there being 50,000 people there and everybody wanting to pat you on the back.
Well, if you looked at the documentary on Our Town, I think it was called, or whatever, on Bray this week, and I was kind of caught it briefly last night, but Dylan Barnett was on it, and he went over to Brighton as a kid, and you've all these young soccer players who go over to England, and the reputation before they go over, and they come, once they get into adulthood, or they actually get to play against senior players, and they get to a particular level, they plateau, and as a consequence of plateauing, they actually regress, because the mental ability to deal with obstacles that come along your way, or having to marry your expectation with reality, I think can be very tough. So if you're a young jockey, there are a million really good apprentices, and really, really good apprentices, who just, once they lost their claim, when they lost the advantage of being an apprentice, they didn't really kick on, and there are any amount of those. So Gavin is one of them that has to kind of kick on to the next level, and I definitely think in that instance, when you're maybe if your trainer isn't necessarily having a great season, or you've had a few bad luck stories, like, it can hurt you. But he has the mentality, I think, that he's going to just go to the top to marry that talent that he has anyway.
Well, I think the answer on social media there was
like, that is such a good answer, because, like, I mean, we're journalists, like, you will get slagging on social media, and it is, I think the best thing is just to kind of say, like, like, and a lot of the time, if somebody's criticising you on it, he or she will
very, very hard to ignore it, you know? Like, you definitely... There are definitely patches where you're really good at ignoring stuff like that, and then other patches where, for whatever reason, it can get under your skin.
Yeah, and some of it is obviously patently outlandish, but some of it will actually be quite true. So, like, that's the difficult thing for a jockey. But the problem with whatever about you and I, like, when you're a jockey, people's money's at stake, and that is the root of the criticism or the abuse. Like, he's on about a horse there that's a hold-up ride. Whoever criticises riding that horse 100% had it backed. And you've these people then who are online who can basically sit behind a screen and won't be noticed, and they can use whatever name they want. But Gavin would appreciate that. Like, a lot of young trainers are using social media to their benefit as well, and it's brilliant for promoting good rides as well. So if Gavin gave a great ride to Fernando Vichi, that'll be all over the world. So there's that as well.
Yeah, no, totally, and it has the power to amplify. And a sport like racing is very clever to use social media, because it is having crossover appeal, and it's really working. So definitely something that needs to be tended and minded and taught, I think, to people who are coming through in all sports as well. I did want to also just point out that €10 from all of the 1,000 tickets purchased tomorrow to attend this year's Dubai Duty-Free Irish Derby will go to the Peter McVerry Trust, the National Housing and Homeless charity, who provide accommodation for the homeless at 7 different locations in Kildare alone. Obviously, they're all over the country. They are... an incredible charity, and a tenner from each of the 1,000 tickets is going to the Kildare branch of the Peter McVerry Trust. So again, supporting a particularly good cause. Let's preview the Derby. What's going to happen?
As I said, it said just to Gavin there, it's really interesting that when they ran at the Epsom Derby, that Ballydoyle decided, they used to say if you have 3 Derby horses, you've none. And that's a very nice soundbite. It's not actually true, because, I mean, if you have 3 horses, you have a better chance than 1 of winning. And Ballydoyle, you know, maybe it was a wrong decision not to run high definition in the race, because he'd run so well in the trial in the Dante. He was kind of favoured for the Derby nearly all year. And unfortunately, like, I fancied Bolshoi Bally out of the way, and he was in a great position in the race, but he was already injured, and he was basically returned an injured horse, so they didn't have any backup. Now, whether it was a response to that or just the fact that it's a different race, if Ballydoyle has 5 of the 11 runners there, so obviously it nearly has half the field. So in effect, with high definition being a horse who would not appreciate, I think, a stop-start gallop even over 1.5 miles, Aidan O'Brien and the lads, as we call them, have decided that we're going to dictate the fractions in this race. And I mentioned I was talking to Johnny Murtagh when he won the race on Fame and Glory. That race was run like it was like a baton passing, so that, like, Fame and Glory would pick up the baton last and win it. And there was a massive gamble on Fame and Glory that morning, in that Connections basically kind of had an idea of how the race was going to pan out, and Fame Glory was the best horse, so he as such will win this race. And the Curragh is a far easier track than Epsom, so if high definition is good enough and he's come on from the Dante, he probably should win. But everything, as they say, Ger, has a price.
Yeah. What do you mean everything has a price?
Like, he is, what is he, 2-1, sort of 5-2,
7-8 I'm seeing here is the most recent.
7-4, yeah. So, like, you can look at the Irish Guineas, which was won by Empress Josephine at a big price, and I'm a massive fan of backing Galileo horses trained by Aidan O'Brien at biggish prices who are unexposed in races like this. I'd happily back them all day, every day.
So which is the Galileo stuff in this?
Well, he has Van Gogh, who's not by Galileo, who obviously runs, who would have a chance well on the better ground. Matchless, who's probably here to have some sort of pacemaking duty. Arturo Toscanini might be something similar, but definitely not Wordsworth. So Wordsworth obviously would be a dream for the headline writers if he were to win the race, but he actually ran in the Queen's Vase, which is exactly what Santiago did last year. When Santiago won the Queen's Vase, he was rated 94. Wordsworth went into the race rated 104. He was beaten in the Queen's Vase, but he's very lazy. Maybe he does want a bit of a trip, but he raced so lazily off a slow pace that day. I think if they go really hard here, it'll basically sort a lot of the men from the boys, to use a fairly tired and old analogy, and he will be staying on. Shamie Heffernan has won 2 of the last 4 derbies. He also won the Irish Guineas the last last classic run at the Curragh, and this horse is 16-20 to 1, and the fact that he backs up so quickly after Royal Ascot, he's out at Chelsea Rose. You will remember, a lot of our listeners, Con Collins trained, very good mare. She won very good races at the Curragh, and I think he's well capable of being the shake-up, albeit the second and third from Epsom are here, and a horse, Lone Eagle, who was fancied but didn't run at Epsom.
Okay, do you like McSweeney?
No
Right.
chance.
Okay, all right. Anything else you want to talk about this weekend?
I think, it's a brilliant 3 days of race, a fantastic race. Even the 2-year-old maiden run tomorrow with a sister to Alpha Centauri and half sister to Mad Moon, for example. But I think above all, just the people who are going racing tomorrow, I think, it'll be fantastic. The Curragh really is in a place where it needs to kick on after the redevelopment. It needs to get people back racing. And I spoke to Michael Maloney, the Galway manager, yesterday. He is absolutely dying for a crowd at Galway. Anyone, he said, it's not financial, it's just I want people to be at Galway. Galway's about the people. And I know that, there's obviously the Indian variant and all that, and the Delta variant and blah, blah, blah. And we are worried about where this is going. But I think race courses who've done a great job, by the way, and obviously distributing vaccines and so forth. I think they're in a good place to welcome some crowds back, and I hope people are cognizant of that, because it is an outdoor pursuit, we have to remember, and I hope the Curragh does a good job tomorrow in showing what can be done with the small crowd, I suppose.
The other thing that happened this week that we should talk about, Fianna Fáil TD for Tipperary, Jackie Cahill, said that Jim Bulger should come before the Parliamentary Committee, this is the Joint Oireachtas Committee, and talk about his claims about doping in the Irish horse racing industry. No harm that Jim Bulger would go and do that in public and have that conversation and keep that conversation going?
I'd be amazed if Jim, there's absolutely nothing for him to be gained in going to this. He doesn't have parliamentary privilege, so he obviously is kind of tongue-tied in what he can say. It's not like an interview with the newspaper where, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to say. This will be something that's, broadcast, and, as much as I'd say Jim was probably regretful when this came up, because he's like, well, if I want to save face here, I kind of have to go, but if I go, I'll clearly have to evade some questions, because you can't say particular things even if you believe them. So as much as Jim has these ideas about what's going on, which a lot of people would agree with, I think it's more the fact that this might happen, and it's kind of, brought it to the next stage. And if we have the IHRB and HRI in front of a committee, that's great, but I can't see why Jim would go. It's a zero-sum game for him.
Well, I suppose he could say much of the things that he has already said, and then say, look, I'm not going to name any names here because you're not going to give me parliamentary privilege. You're not allowed. There's obviously a famous court case around that, and we voted it down as a country when we had the opportunity to give these Oireachtas committees more power. We as a country decided no, we don't want to give our Parliament the opportunity to investigate. So I still don't really understand why we voted that down. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. And I don't know. I think everybody having more openness around the discussion of this is actually, it's good, because it's a clear indication that, these are the changes that we've made in the last number of years. This is the progress that we've made. These are the investigations that we're doing. And these are so it emerged recently in the answer to one of the parliamentary questions, I think, that Sport Ireland had used some private investigators to do some investigation into doping, and that kind of stuff would give people a lot of confidence that actually we are looking into the type of stuff and we are doing digging.
Definitely, and I think Jim has on one level done a great service here, because it's brought the issue to the fore. I, for one, don't think we've dealt with the issue of drugs and racing all that well. As I've said in this show to Richie last week, I think when a trainer's horse is actually proven to have a prohibited substance, the authorities are so ready to accept the excuse offered that it's unbelievable at times. Trainers will offer excuses that are not at all plausible, and they'll just accept them because it's the easy way out. So there's that level. Now, the level that Jim is talking about is more of a kind of an epidemic, and that it's more widespread than that. And I think Jim has done a great job. Just personally, I think it'd be hard for him to appear before this panel, because he just have to be unable to answer too many questions. Maybe he thinks it would benefit, and I think Jim's at a stage in his life where he's kind of happy to rock the boat a bit as well, where he's like, I want to get a conversation on this. And the IHRB probably does have answers in terms of its own kind of testing of horses and how widespread or not drugs are in racing, but interesting times ahead, I suppose.
Yeah, okay. I just want to tell everybody as well, bonus race weekend in the Tote 10 to follow with the Irish Derby at the Curragh tomorrow. Do either of us have the potential winner to close the gap to Tom, who is actually killing us at the moment? It's almost like Tom knows more about this than most human beings do. So the scoreboard is Tom Malone, 216. In second, there must be some mistake here. What? It says Ger Gilroy's in second, Johnny.
I'm in a rush to get to Limerick, Ger.
120.
Yeah.
I have, and you have 70, a measly 75 points, Johnny.
That's bombing it by any standards. It's poor. I must have high definition though.
Total will be back taking bets at the Curragh on Saturday. They are delighted to welcome back customers after such a long absence. If you're unable to attend in person, you can place all of your Derby bets on tote.ie and avail of Tote Plus. We'll find out how that leaderboard is looking next week. Until then, take care.
Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.